Hey guys, Brian with Old Virginia Log Homes, coming to you today on our brand new YouTube channel. Only took us 40 years to finally get a YouTube channel, but here we are and we're so glad you found us. So we wanted to kick the channel off with a really good discussion, and one I think that's a big concern for every new potential homeowner, and a question that comes up a lot. And so we're going to talk about 5 ways to save money when you're building your log home. And some of these are going to be deal breakers, and for some folks, they're not going to want to consider saving monies for some of these, and that's perfectly fine. We never tell anybody that paying for the leather seats isn't worth it. But these are ways, if you're up against a pretty tight budget and you're looking to save a few dollars, these are ways that you can save a few dollars. Now, I intended to do this in front of a nice log structure today. It's kind of pretty out, but there was so much noise out. We got a lot of beating and banging going along as we're manufacturing some logs today, and got the road out in front here. So I ended up finding a quiet place in our distillery here to do this. So sorry for the no log home background, but regardless, let's get into it. So the number one place to save money is a fireplace. Now, fireplaces and log homes kind of go hand in hand, and we know that everybody loves them, and we love them too. But just to be brutally honest, they are terribly, terribly expensive. And even more so if you're going to do a stone veneer or a dry stack stone, they can get very, very expensive. Now, that's going to vary greatly depending on the size of the fireplace and where your labor market's at, wherever you may be. But it could easily be $15,000 to $20,000, possibly more, for a fireplace. And as a fellow who has lived in a home with big vaulted ceilings like we all love in our log structures, I can tell you that a open fireplace will not keep your house warm enough to be comfortable in the winter alone. So, a big concern nowadays, especially with everything that we've seen happen with some of the storms recently, and what happened to Texas, and hurricanes, and even here in Southwest Virginia, sometimes some folks can lose power for weeks. So a lot of folks are looking for that alternate power source, or the alternate heat source, I should say. And of course, a fireplace is fantastic in theory. In reality, it ends up sucking most of the heat produced by the fire up the fireplace. And I think we've all probably heard that. So there are solutions, of course. What we're finding a lot of people are doing nowadays is maybe putting a stone veneer on the wall and doing a stone hearth, and then maybe doing a really nice freestanding stove, something like a Vermont Castings or any of the other really nice brands out there. With a freestanding wood stove, you can heat with the stove, you can heat with the pipe, and you're not paying for that immense amount of masonry and stonework that go along with that fireplace. Now, those stoves can get relatively expensive depending on your taste, but they really are a functional item in your home. Now, having said all that, I realize, of course, that some people just love an open fire and they can't imagine a home without an open fireplace. And if that's you, then by all means, that's what you should definitely do. But it seems like we have fewer and fewer people building fireplaces nowadays. Sometimes we see pre-manufactured fireplaces, which is relatively new in our experience. We've seen some gas fireplaces, of course, which are nice for the ease and the cleaning of it. But let's be honest, a lot of us are out in the woods and we got this huge source of fuel that we could use for our fireplace. So just a consideration, wood stoves seem to be getting more popular by far than fireplaces. Talking about that stone veneer, the next place that I would talk about savings would be the foundation of a home. So if you put two homes together and one has a really beautiful stone foundation and the other one has what we call split face block or split block, a few other nicknames for them, but that rough textured block that you see, you would probably say that the stone looks nicer in the foundation. But I can tell you from our experience that if they're not sitting side by side, most people do not even notice the difference between the foundations. Now, I do not like personally just a raw block foundation of what you would see behind a veneer. But this split face block is a very textured block. It gives it a lot of depth, and you can get it dyed different colors, and they look really good in the sense that you don't even notice them. And if you don't notice them, then that's a good thing, because everybody's focusing on how beautiful your log home is with the hand-hewed logs, and they're amazing. So do not get tied up around the fact that you have to have a stone foundation. You can use split face block. You can get it in different colors, and it comes out looking really, really nice. So that's a thought. And another thing I would, just to touch back on that is, and I haven't rehearsed this, guys, so bear with me. Another thought on that, it would be, when you think about your foundation, by the time you put a deck on, by the time you put porches on, part of your foundation's in the ground anyway, you really don't see a huge amount of foundation. If you had a huge exposed basement, then you may consider sticking with some stone veneer just to maximize that when you have such a huge area. But I promise you, if you have a smaller foundation, maybe just a couple feet, most people don't even notice it. Okay, another cost savings: chinking. Now, chinking is that material that you see go between the logs, and it used to be a lot of horsehair and mud. We don't see that so much anymore, of course. So the new modern chinking, of course, the one everyone's familiar with, is by a wonderful company called Permachink. It's very good stuff. It's amazing. It does a fantastic job. It stays in place, but it is costly in itself, although not terribly so. But it is a fair amount of work to put into the structures. And when you consider the labor to put it in, and then the labor that you need to do when you go back to maintenance your home and however many years down the road, you will find that the chinking adds a lot more work for you than what you would have if you had not used chinking. So it's an expense up front, and it's an ongoing expense when you consider the labor for maintaining it. And chinking is one of those things that I think a lot of our customers will come in thinking that they really want it. But then when they see a system like our Williams system, that's a log-on-log with a V-groove with no chinking, they really fall in love with it. So honestly, the majority of our customers choose not to do chinking. And we don't try to persuade you one way or the other, but when they look at the benefits and the downfalls, they choose not to do chinking. And you may be talking about several $1,000s, and I mean, easily, the material alone is probably, for an average house of say 2,000 square feet, you could be looking at, depending on the width of your chink groove, you could be looking at several $1,000s in the chinking alone, and then much more in labor. So it really does add up. The next one's kind of a twofold. So this is number 4. Number 4 is doing a lot of the work yourself. Now, this is always an interesting subject, because the truth is you can absolutely save a lot of money doing the work yourself. When you look at a log structure built by Old Virginia Log Homes, we do the log portion. So all the specialty fitting and all the things we do with draw knives and axes to fit these logs and make them tight, that's done by us. But we do not do a turnkey structure, which means that you or your builder still have a tremendous amount of work to do after we leave. And so you may find that you're handy enough to do some things like flooring, or potentially framing walls, or certainly painting if you have any sheetrock. And a lot of people don't do sheetrock, but more than not do some. Those are things that a lot of people are more comfortable with. And you could potentially do yourself and save a lot of money if you're able. But here's the Pandora's box of doing your own work. We have had a number of customers throughout the decades who, to put it gently, maybe shouldn't have been doing as much of their own work as they wanted. So you can find yourself out of your depth very quickly. And because of that, you start making mistakes, or you start cutting multiple times something that a professional would have done only once. There is a reason why people make a living as roofers or plumbers or electricians or carpenters, general contractors. Um, that reason is that Bob Vila made it look awful easy, but the truth is it's not always the case. And I have found through the years that sometimes it would be better if you are not proficient at building, if you were just to get a second job and apply that money towards the builder and the extra money you're going to pay for them to do the framing or whatever the case may be. Now, I will say that everybody likes to do a little something on their house because you really want it to be part of who you are, and you want it to be, your home. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We have found the things that especially most people should be hiring out without a doubt is going to be foundations and roofs. And log structures tend to have very steep roof pitches. They are, frankly, dangerous to work on if you do not have the experience and the skills necessary to do so. So do not think that if you've never done a roof that a log home is the place to start. That's not the case. And while we're talking about doing the work yourself, another thing that we hear a lot is I have an uncle, a brother, a cousin. There's our phone. I'm not gonna stop now. You have an uncle, a brother, a cousin who is a builder, and you're going to get them to help you. That almost never happens. The reality is that if that is their job, they have to make a living doing that job. And after they've been building somebody else's house for 10 or 12 hours that day, the last thing they're going to do is come build yours for free. So I would never, ever tell anybody to count on those friends or families helping. And if they do, fantastic. Sometimes we have some retired fathers or father-in-laws that really pitch in and get it done, which is amazing. But I would never count that as money in the bank when it comes to figuring out the cost of your home. Okay, the last and number 5 thing, and certainly there are more, but number 5 is talking about roof systems. And this is honestly a whole video in itself, so I'm just barely going to touch on this, and we'll do another video in the near future about roof systems. So when you talk about log structures or timber frame structures, potentially conventional built homes, there's really 2 different types of roof structures. I'm kind of generalizing here, but there's 2 different kinds of roof structures. You're going to either use a conventional truss made by a truss company, an engineered truss, and we've all seen them. They're the triangular things that sit on a house with the webbing in between them, and they are really good at doing a lot of things, like being able to do recessed lights and being able to do duct work up there if you want to. So, and they're also faster. But the biggest thing about trusses is that they are much less expensive at the end of the day than hand-framed rafters. Now, hand-framed rafters in a lot of home designs are a necessary thing to have. And everybody's seen them. They're big beams up to the ridge beam. They're gorgeous. You can get that same look with trusses, but they're not going to be structurally supporting the roof. So those beams that you have in a hand-frame roof, they're supporting the weight of the roof. So those beams themselves are expensive because they're typically much larger than what you would have with decorative beams. But then every step of the process on building your roof after that is also expensive. And that means 2x6 tongue and groove or some sort of 2x tongue and groove, and rigid foam insulation, which is terribly expensive, polyisosanurate, the long word for saying it's made out of oil and it's really expensive, and a tremendous amount of labor. So if you could put a house under a roof, or we call it in the dry, and you're using a truss, you honestly might have that done within a week. A hand frame roof could easily take 2.5 or 3 weeks And if you have doghouse dormers or A dormers, um, then it's going to cost even more. So, those are a big consideration. So if there's so much more money, then why would anybody use those? Well, the answer is you cannot get a huge amount of head height out of a truss because you have to have an inner roof, or your ceiling pitch is less than your outside roof pitch. And that's because you got all those members that are helping spread the load on that truss. So if you have a house with a very steep A-line roof, you cannot use a truss and get enough head height in your loft if you have a loft. So you can build an E-wall, you can build a 2-story. There are ways to get around it, but at the end of the day, they all cost a lot of money. So what you would have saved in your roof by going to a truss, by building an E-wall, a 3 or 4 foot high wall above your first floor, you put it right back into logs. So sometimes we have folks who come in and they look at plans, or they got some ideas, and they realize that for livability and for cost effectiveness, a single-story plan might be better suited for them. I will do another video that better explains the roof systems, and we got some models to show you what a hand-frame roof system is. And if you have any questions, you can always call us here at Old Virginia. I will put our contact info in the description below, of course. So don't be afraid to comment, guys, to tell us what you think of these 5 suggestions. And maybe you have some more suggestions. If you've done your own home before and you've found something that really saves you money, then please comment and let other people know. The one thing that we strive to do at Old Virginia, because we're just one portion of your home, is that we want to make everybody we can really aware of the total cost of the structure. It doesn't do you any good to budget X number of dollars when it ends up being this number of dollars. We don't want you to blow your budget, and we want to try to save you money if we can. And we can only suggest those things, and some of those things you're not going to be willing to make compromises on, and we totally understand that as well. So comment, come check us out. If you have any questions at all, just give us a call. You can ask for me, you can ask for Heather, you can ask for Judy, you can ask for any of us, and we'll be glad to talk to you about log structures and answering those questions that you may have. In the future, we're going to do some videos talking about the roof structures and the differences between trusses, and go into more detail on that hand framing for sure. I think maybe we need to do a video on basic terminology of log structures, like what's an A-dormer, what's a shed dormer, what's a doghouse dormer, so what's a knee wall. So we can do all those things and try to give everybody a heads up as you start down this journey. Building a home is a process, guys. It does not happen overnight. You have to gain a lot of information and a lot of knowledge on this path. So we are here to help you do that. Don't hesitate to call us. And I just want to thank all you guys for tuning in and listening to what we have to say about potential ways, 5 ways that you could save money on your log home. Thanks, guys.